Today I want to talk about a low magic setting for your D&D campaign. This video was inspired from a blog post on D&D Beyond done by Mike Bernier named How to Run a Low Magic Campaign in D&D. I'll have it linked down below. So first off, why would you want to run a low magic setting? I think changing your setting to low magic does a few key things. Number one is it makes your campaign more grounded. You're not going to be fighting Tiamat. You're just not. It's unrealistic for 5 people to go tackle something like that. And this really starts bringing it down to earth, okay? We're not doing these world-ending campaigns. This is situational based, and things that were once so easy in a high magic system become pretty tough in a low magic system. A young red dragon is a true challenge in a low magic system. And so if you want that difficulty to come back and just like fighting for your survival, then a low magic system is a good setting for you. Number two is that it increases the difficulty. I'm probably not going to allow people to be raised from the dead in a low magic setting, and so, dying is permanent. Also, you probably don't have wizards running around or sorcerers running around casting fireballs or hypnotic pattern. Those massive changes in the magical web aren't here, and so you're gonna have fewer classes to choose from, and that list is notably on the top end of most powerful classes. We begin removing them from there. So the second key point, far more difficult. Number 3 is it sets a very particular tone. There are some tones you just cannot hit in a high magic setting. Gritty being one of the ones that I feel like is kind of lost in a high magic system, because how are you going to be trudging through the mud when you can cast Prestidigitation and it's gone? You can open up locks magically with knock, you can just teleport across forests. Like, you just miss out on some of that have to trudge through the mud business, which is pretty awesome if you're looking for that flavor. So first and foremost, I will say a low magic system is not for everyone. If you're looking for that pulpy fantasy high heroics, it's not going to be here. This is going to be more gritty. I think of the Blade itself, the book, where it's like you have heroes, but they get the job done in kind of gritty ways. You need to stop that caravan. Sure, you could chuck a fireball at it. If you were, high magic system, you could just chuck a fireball at it from 120 feet away and boom, it blows up and mission accomplished. Well, here, you kind of have to get in the nitty and gritty of it. Maybe you start setting up some traps. Maybe you set up ambushes. Maybe you poison their water supply. What are you going to do to take out this caravan that is stronger than your small motley crew? You got to get clever. So let's move into how I would personally run my low magic setting. I think there's a lot of cool places to begin with, you can just pull from human history. For example, you could just do the Middle Ages, typical D&D, except now it's a low magic system. Great. You could do ancient Greece and maybe mix in your low magic setting with like these mythical creatures every now and again, like a Medusa. So now you have to slay a Medusa as a bunch of fighters, kind of makes it more interesting. Or you might do something like the feudal ages in Japan. That's a really interesting time period, but for me personally, I'm doing the discovery of the New World. This is the time period when the British and Spanish Empire were really competing over New America, and France was also involved more as like traders and diplomats. That's such an interesting setting because you have the Native Americans at that time who were interacting, these two worlds that never interacted with each other now interacting for the first time, and they're discovering creatures they've never met before. They're discovering beavers. It was the first time they had ever seen beavers. Plants, tobacco they had never seen. I love that idea. I love the idea of the party being part of an excursion. They land on a shore and it's like, okay, now they need to set up camp. So there's base building aspects. What do you do to set up your camp? How do you make sure you have food and water? And you're not only supplying for yourself, but for this group of people as well. So you can base build and get bigger. As you collect these new fantastic resources, you can send them back on ship. You get paid a lot of money, but you're also discovering new creatures, new ruins, new cultures. I love that in a low magic system. We take that idea. So that's my setting. But now what are kind of the rules I'm interposing over that setting to bring out the most flavor from that setting? The first rule I would enact is called gritty realism. If you haven't heard about gritty realism, it changes your long rests to short rests. And in order to get a long rest, you have to be in a secured location for multiple days. So like a city. So you can't just be camping out in the woods and get a long rest. That means save points act as harbors. And then as soon as you leave, journey has begun, the mission has begun. It's basically like every time you walk out of that city, it's the beginning of a long dungeon, because you can't just rest throughout that dungeon. You got to go through, plan it accordingly, and get back so you can get your long rest. So it means that these home bases really feel like sanctuaries, and they act as such. Instead of you can just heal off a severed arm because you take 8-hour nap. And that further increases the difficulty in this low magic setting. High difficulty is a good thing. It makes it feel gritty, which is the flavor I'm actually looking for. And another thing I want to be huge is exploration. We just landed on a new world. I want to have this feeling of exploring something brand new. I probably wouldn't even be pulling creatures from the monster manual. I'd probably be custom making every new creature just to give that feeling of they've never seen anything like this. And so I don't want them to just skip over exploration. I want exploration to be a key part of this system. And as a piece of that, inventory management needs to be a thing here. I know we often hand wave inventory management because it's annoying to keep track of how many arrows you have left. I get it. However, that's not why we do it. Why we do it is because you can be 10 days deep into a jungle with a finite amount of resources, and you have to come together to really come up with a solid plan. Maybe you have to get over a chasm, and all you have is 4 arrows, a rope, and a handful of pitons. But not only do you have to get across, you got to get back to get home to get your long rest. That's when having this inventory management gets really interesting, because you can't just carry everything into the forest. Everything has a cost. Weight is a cost. Getting into those fine details of how these things are taken care of for the right party is going to be really rewarding, and I personally am really excited to DM those moments. The wilderness survival of the Dungeons Master Guide is going to be huge for this portion. You know, we're really going to focus in on that element to just explore these crazy topographies that they have never seen before. I love that idea. Next up is how I'm going to limit our classes. I'm not going to allow wizards to be running around in the party. There's a couple different ways to go about doing this. We can just say no wizards, no clerics, no sorcerers. You can choose between either a warlock or a druid, and you can have one of them in your party. And then you can have 2 either rangers or paladins in any combination of which, and then the rest have to be your standard marshals. That's one way of going about doing it. Another way is just to hard ban some classes and just allow others, in which case I'd probably ban all the full casters. The article suggests that we let druids stay around, but I think druids are probably a little bit too powerful. So we can nerf them in other ways if we do decide to keep druids. We could say that they get capped off at 3rd level spells, and some of those spells are going to be banned. They can keep leveling up, and they can keep getting new spell slots, but they're not going to get new spells. That's another way of doing it. Personally, I just lean towards completely banning all full casters, and then limiting your half casters, and trying to convince everybody to focus in on the fighters, the rogues, the barbarians. I'm trying to keep it in that area more so than the other end, which again is increasing the difficulty, not only because we just have fewer options, so we're losing out on some aspects of the game. We're losing out on control spells, we're losing out on support spells, for example. We're going to have a more limited access to those things, so that's going to be nerfed in and of itself, but also we're just cutting off the head of some of the best classes in the game. Wizards are probably the most powerful class in the game. They're just not here. Sorcerers, druids, they're up there, just not here. And so it's going to be a harder game because of that. And then I'm going to be banning certain spells, like Revivify is not going to be a thing. So again, it's just a harder game. So I don't expect this to be something that everybody enjoys. I expect this to be more of the hardcore players that enjoy this. And I personally think I would enjoy it a lot. And I think I'm going to enjoy DMing it a lot. But what I want to hear from you guys is, 1, what do you think of the setting I have set up? Do you have any cool ideas to make that setting cooler for my players? 2, what would you run in your low magic system? And 3, would you run a low magic system at all? Would you actually enjoy that, or do you think it's lame? Why do you want to play D&D and not be casting Summon Draconic Spirit? Duh. Let me know in the comments down below. But other than that, I just hope you have yourselves a lovely day. Take it easy, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.